Hello, I hope you are doing well. My name is Yanina Rapatskaya. I'm a postgraduate student from Moscow, Russia. The theme of my presentation today is traditional Russian drama, practices of self-presentation of Russian extreme metal bands Second to Sun and Lem Absurd. But unfortunately, any conversation about Russian culture these days is impossible without considering the current political situation in the world. I don't think this is any justification for everything our state does, and I hope soon we will again live in peace and justice will be restored. However, we can still talk about the part of the heritage of Russian culture which speaks of the humane in man, of the inner search for truth and rejection of injustice. I hope that culture exchange without borders is still possible and conflict among people and states will go into oblivion while music, culture, and unity will live on. Well, the study of national identity is an important part of metal music studies. Researchers examine through what images, words, and sounds it's formed in the work of various musical projects. In my dissertation research, I analyze the representation of national identity in modern Russian black metal. In this context, some bands take a traditional approach incorporating folk melodies, instruments, and familiar stereotypes associated with the country into their works. But in this presentation, I would like to analyze a less obvious view of what Russianness is on the example of extreme metal projects Second to Sun and Lem Absurd. These bands are united by a manifestation of belonging to Russian scene, which is implemented through specific ideas about Russian cultural products. Some time ago, I read several articles by Marco Biasioli, an Italian researcher of popular Russian music. He wrote, "People in Europe is interested in harsh, strange, depressing music from Russia. All of these features are identified as something Russian. Despite the fact that this researcher deals with music of other genres, I decided to check how this opinion relates to extreme metal. And to do this, I turned to the idea of cultural concept. Cultural concept is a significant image reflecting a fragment of the national picture of the world, summarized in the word. One of the key concepts of Russian culture is toska. This term is well explained by Vladimir Nabokov, Russian-American novelist, poet, and translator. You can see his explanation on this slide. The concept of Russian toska is also associated with such concepts as sadness, boredom, and fear. So I decided to consider how the concept is represented in the work of the selected projects, their self-description and the listener's perception on the textual, visual, and sonic levels, and how it forms their identity and allows musicians to position themselves on the Russian and international scenes. Then I have defined criteria for selecting cases for analysis. First of all, they should represent the more recent Russian extreme metal scene and have 3 or more music albums that have received a response from Russian and foreign listeners and reviewers. It's also important that they should explicitly associate their works with their country of origin. And of course, the gloomy side of Russian life should be the main theme of band's works. So I choose 2 bands that meet this criteria. The first one is Russophone project Second to Sun. It was founded in 2011 in St. Petersburg by Vladimir Lektinin. The band currently consists of 4 members, a vocalist, a guitarist, a drummer, and a bassist. The leader of the band doesn't limit his work to rigid genre boundaries, although he doesn't hide the fact that he is largely inspired by the classic Scandinavian black metal project of the 90s. As of June 2022, the band has released 6 full-length albums, sold several editions of vinyl records, received recognition in the various local and global music media, and got an offer from Metal Blade Records. But the band refused this offer. And the second one is founded in 2015, Moscow-based Anglophone project Lem Absurd. It also started as a studio project, but later acquired a lineup of 5 musicians, a vocalist, a guitarist, a drummer, and a bassist. Their music exists at the intersection of post-black metal and metalcore. The discography consists of 3 albums. This band has achieved less audience coverage, but went on 2 European tours and received positive reviews in Russian and foreign media. The members of the selected bands don't use explicit musical and visual folklore motifs, but define their bands as carrier of a specific Russianness, formulated and constructed by the musicians of the projects. According to the musicians, the essence of Russianness lies in gloominess and chthon of Russian culture. Chthon is something gloomy and sinister, sometimes connected with Russian realities. In this case, Russianness is what makes a certain culture or social practice typically Russian. Musicians of the Dom Absurd declare that the Russian export cultural products are not exotic stereotypes like balalaikas or matryoshkas, but the traditional Russian drama, as told by Dostoevsky and Tarkovsky. It's a lie when we try to be cheerful, says Second to Sun frontman. The expression Russian drama in relation to the main theme of his work is used by Alexei Slavin, the leader of the Dom Absurd. He doesn't mean a literary genre, but a tragic situation, gloomy events, and circumstances that cause mental suffering. According to the musician, this mental suffering is one of the fundamental parts of the Russian cultural code. These two bands explored this idea in a variety of ways. Next, I will consider how the concept that unites these projects is represented by each of the bands. There are three components to analyze. The first one is language and plots, which represent subjects, sources, type of narration. Visual part, which consists of subjects, technique, materials, and palette, and musical, sonic, and performative characteristics. This time, I will only talk about the first two components. As a lyricist and songwriter, Vladimir Lehtinin believes that the language is one of the critical components of any band's authenticity. To some extent, this option is typical of black metal. His songs are the mystical interpretation of a terrifying reality. Each track of Second to Sun is more like a musical painting that based on its own story. Russian Toska and Chthon reveal themselves in the song inspired by dark local historical tales, Finno-Ugric mythology, news reports, books and movies. For example, the song Owls is about one of the largest popular uprising against the power of the Soviet during the Civil War. The Wall is about the tradition of the local Finnish people Erza to wall up a living person in the fortress foundation. Me or Him is about the ancient Udmurt curse, which was based on the ritual of committing suicide. Train 1702 is about meeting with a UFO. Ladoga Master is about a drunk man who shot on the tourist on the lake Ladoga, shouting that he is the master of this lake. The song also contains a direct speech of the mythical Ladoga Master. The Fool is a song based on the Yuri Bykov movie, and the page is from a manuscript based on the Gothic tale by Alexei Tolstoy about the vampire. The Anglophone project L'Homme Absurde focuses on the inner world of a person, his sharp negative feelings and gloomy emotions. Thus, Russianness turns out to be a rather vague concept that includes a list of various emotional states close to depressive, but it's not clearly defined. So, the works is based on the appeal to emotions. The musician's work is dedicated to deep personal feelings, experiencing loss, loneliness, and identity crisis. According to Alexei Slavin, the band's frontman, author of music and lyrics, the emphasis on emotion allows the band to fit into the traditional Russian drama. He points that the deep feelings and strong emotions invested in lyrics and manifested in the band's performances are the features of Russian bands more than of musicians from other countries. The band explains their choice of English by the fact that the fashion for the Russian language in the local underground community appeared not so long ago. So they firstly stick on the old pattern, and secondly, claim that for the lyricist, writing in English is much easier than in Russian. On this slide, you can see examples of songs on different subjects. I would like to emphasize that the songs of Second to Sun are the stories with an explicit plot told by the observer. The lyrics of L'Homme Absurde are more like emotional monologues devoid of a specific subject, but describing feelings and states. For example, the song Separation, written as a first-person point of view, like most of the band's songs, is dedicated to the death of the close friend, but this is not directly stated. Here is a quote from the song Separation. This passage contains images and phrases that help to roughly guess what happened. An unexpected need to bring flowers, blurry vision because of the tears or a strong shock, a cursed day when someone important disappeared forever. Marco Biasioli wrote, contemporary Russophone bands increasingly resort to the visual in order to deliver Russianness. Russianness, rather than sonically played, is constructed and performed outside of the sonic through the aid of lyrics, interviews, clothing, and mostly videos. Also, we know that for metal music, the visual component is critically important. The musicians of the selected projects note that the bad album cover can push listeners away from the release. So both projects responsibly choose an artist, designers, photographers, and animators to create a visual image of the band. On the other hand, the recognizable patterns of the album design is almost every subgenre of extreme metal makes it difficult to introduce a national component into the cover. On this slide, you can see the album covers of Second to Sun releases. Second to Sun and classic Scandinavian black metal cover arts are similar in terms of subjects, materials, and palettes, but these bands also use details that indicate nationality in its visual design. For example, a folk ornament decorates the clothes of the person from the cover of the album The Black. Also, such visual motifs appear in the band's logo. Although the name of the project is in English and it's typed in Gothic font associated with Western and Northern European countries, this logo includes an octogram or Karelian or Finnish star used in the traditional ornaments of the Finno-Ugric people as a symbol of glory and light. Perhaps this graphic element is associated with the image of Venus, the morning star, which is second to sun. L'Homme Absurde prefers photographs for its releases, citing films noir and Tarkovsky movies as references. On this slide, you can see the cover art of the releases of the bands that influenced the project. All of these bands, with the exception of Placebo, are related to post-genres, post-metal and post-black metal. Celeste uses dramatic female characters in their visual media in a similar way to L'Homme Absurde does. The image of the bird is imported to Amin Ra and Harakiri for the Sky, as well as for L'Homme Absurde. Releases of An Autumn for Crippled Children are usually decorated with slightly distorted photos. The influence of British rock band Placebo on the style of L'Homme Absurde is also very noticeable. Emotional portraits and even approach to typography. Among the artists who influenced the visual style of the band, the musicians of L'Homme Absurde named Travis Smith. In his works, we often see the images of the birds, flying, defeated, and lonely. For L'Homme Absurde, a bird is a significant image. They use it on merchandise and posters. Vladimir Lektiny often publishes the descriptions of the song concepts and meanings of the images in his social networks. At the same time, the musicians of L'Homme Absurde refuse to comment on their visual solutions in order to leave enough space for the listeners to interpret on their own. In addition, they note that unlike Second to Sun, they don't use specific stories and existing images, but rely on personal experience and associations related to them. The album cover art of Second to Sun is richly detailed visual narrative. The fullness of events and multi-features are not typical for L'Homme Absurde. Their visual design is minimalistic emotional statement, conveyed through the gestures and mimics of the models. The plots of the images and the way they are presented are quite consistent with the declared cultural concept, but this may be more related to the canons of the genres. Classic black metal in case of Second to Sun, and post-black metal and post-metal in case of L'Homme Absurde. The visual component of both bands is characterized by a dark palette. Covers of 61 releases of Second to Sun became more monochrome with a change in the sound of the project. After 2015, there are almost no color covers. Out of 45 covers, other than black, gray, and white, are found only on 13 of them, among which only 2 are full color. Most of the Second to Sun covers have a very high level of contrast with a lot of dark fields. In the L'Homme Absurde album covers, gray is a dominant color and overall image contrast is low. The band also tend to use images with low saturation. Their palette is characterized by somewhat muddy, faded colors. These colors of L'Homme Absurde are close to palettes that can be associated with the representation of Russian Tosca in the visual arts. For example, white and Nordic soft, low-saturated colors, pale green or dark green, light blue or blue, brown, gray, and pale yellow. These colors are typical for some works of Russian artists who are associated with Russian Tosca, for example, Isaac Levitan. A similar palette is also used in booklets, covers, and music videos of L'Homme Absurde. But these color schemes are also quite typical for the album covers of other bands playing post-black metal and post-metal. So there are a few points to summarize my research. The subjects of the Second to Sun songs are connected with the dark aspects of local history, folklore, and social environment. The Russian language enhances the band's unique image. For foreign listeners, it evokes gloomy and harsh associations, stereotypically expected from bands from Russia. In addition, the leader of Second to Sun explains the concept of the songs in detail and clearly articulated the choice of images for the cover design. Therefore, even fans who don't speak Russian have an understanding of themes that this project works with. L'Homme Absurde chose a more universal realm of dark inner feelings, human relationships, and preferred a global language over the local one. This issue is typical for the post-genres, so this band's country of origin may not be obvious to the listeners. Despite musicians don't comment on their own work, they still don't hide their nationality. Therefore, we can see constantly appearing comments with references to Russian artists. This project defines a particular gloominess as a distinctive feature of Russian art, but they work with it differently. The songs of Second to Sun are mainly turned to the past, even if it's recent, and told as narrative. L'Homme Absurde works with emotional monologues aimed at experiencing emotions at the moment. The visual component of these bands emphasizes the genre preferences of the musicians more than reveals the analyzed concepts. The similarity of the palette used by L'Homme Absurde and the palette that represents Russian Tosca in paintings can be considered a coincidence, since this set of colors is often used by post-black metal and post-metal bands. Further research will deepen this topic by analysis of musical, sonic, and performative elements of the selected bands. So this brings me back to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.